From the 11 Alive studios, this is The Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
An attempt on the life of the former president, sending shockwaves across the country and reorienting the race for the White House with just months to go before the election. This edition of The Georgia Vote is dedicated to breaking down what happened, what comes next, and what it means for this country. Now, previously planned reporting for this show, including our interview with State Senator Jason Estevez, will air at a later date. So let's start here in western Pennsylvania, where a gunman opened fire at former President Donald Trump at an outdoor rally. He took the stage just after 6 p.m. Eastern time last night, waving to the cheering crowd of supporters, soon settled into delivering his speech. The former president was about 6 minutes in, describing a nearby chart displaying border crossing numbers when the shooting began.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
You saw the former president grab his ear as he went down there as Secret Service agents swarmed and covered him. In a post on his Truth Social website, Mr. Trump described what happened next. He says, quote, "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening." Those are the words of former President Donald Trump. He released another statement this morning saying, quote, "We will fear not." As Secret Service agents begin to take him away from the stage, the former president stood up. Blood could be seen on his face. Mr. Trump put his fist up in the air several times as agents led him off the stage and into a waiting SUV. Those who were in the crowd described the shock of the moment.
I heard pop, pop, pop. I thought it was like a cap gun. And my son's like, "Gun, get down." And next thing you know, everybody around us was down. And then once we got down, we was up at the top of our bleacher. The men were yelling to all the snipers and all the cops to come over.
State police and a SWAT team, started evacuating the bleachers, and then I helped carry the man out of the bleachers to a tent that was behind the bleachers.
You helped carry the man yourself. What was his condition when you were carrying him?
He's deceased.
I pray to God for these people's families. Oh my God. But how is this happening in our country today? And why? Why is it happening?
And overnight, we got a glimpse of former President Trump walking off his private plane after landing at Newark Airport. The video posted by an aide showed the former president flanked by Secret Service agents and heavily armed members of the agency's counter-assault team. Multiple reports say the former president spent the night at his private golf club in nearby Bedminster, New Jersey. What we know is that besides the former president, 3 people were shot. 1 person was killed and 2 other spectators were hurt. The Secret Service said it killed the suspected shooter, who the agency said attacked from an elevated position outside the rally grounds. Overnight, the FBI named the suspect as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks from Pennsylvania. At a briefing early this morning, state police said it's working to investigate what happened, and that investigation continues.
At this time, we have no reason to believe that there is any other existing threat out there. We are doing everything we can to make sure that this is thoroughly investigated, and that if there is any information developed that anyone else was involved, that between PSP and the FBI, that will very quickly be followed up on.
Soon after that shooting, former President Trump, presumed opponent in the November election, President Joe Biden, said that everybody must condemn the assassination attempt. The president made his comments roughly 2 hours later at his vacation home in Delaware. The White House said he later spoke with the former president, then returned to Washington. President Biden wasted no words in decrying this act of violence at a campaign event.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. But the bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. Everybody must condemn it. Everybody.
Almost immediately following that shooting, many of Georgia's lawmakers shared their comments and their concerns. Last night, Doug Richards with the 11 Alive political team talked with State Republican Party Chair Josh McCoon, who expressed his shock at what happened.
A sense of relief that the president appears to be okay. We're obviously praying for him and hoping that he, fully recovers. I know he's being checked out at the moment. But that's where we are. We're relieved that he appears to be okay, and we're obviously all praying for him. Yeah, that's obviously a great shock, and just, again, shock and then followed by relief that he appears to be okay.
Governor Brian Kemp mourning for the, quote, innocent life taken at the Pennsylvania rally. In his tweet on X, he added, "I am deeply thankful for the Secret Service's swift action to keep former President Trump and rally-goers safe." Drew Ferguson, representing Georgia's 3rd Congressional District, called what happened a cowardly attack on President Trump and says his thoughts and his prayers are with the former president, Melania, and their entire family. And Gabriel Sterling, Chief Operating Officer in Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's office, saying political violence has no place in America ever. Glad that former President Trump is okay, praying no one else has been injured. This was a heinous act. We have our political fights with ballots, not bullets. Georgia Senator John Ossoff saying he also condemns the despicable act of violence and prays former President Trump makes a full recovery. The senator thanked the Secret Service for its response and added, political violence is never acceptable and can never be tolerated. And the Reverend Raphael Warnock echoing his Senate colleague who says, in America, we settle our political differences democratically, not violently. I am deeply saddened by today's events in Pennsylvania. I condemn any violence aimed at former President Trump in the strongest terms and pray for him, his family, and our nation. We are better than this. There is a lot that goes into safeguarding the president and former presidents of the United States, their families, and those who are around them whenever they are out in public. It's especially difficult when events are outside and not contained to a specific indoor area. In fact, Saturday marked the first attempt to assassinate a president or presidential candidate since Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981. On that day, President Reagan was leaving a Washington, D.C. hotel when a gunman, later identified as John Hinckley, fired several shots from a revolver. Reagan was hit by a bullet which bounced off the side of his limousine. 3 other people were wounded, most seriously, Press Secretary James Brady, who was paralyzed. To get some more perspective into what happened Saturday from the Secret Service's perspective, 11 Alive's Angelina Salcido talked with former Secret Service agent Bobby McDonald. Their conversation came just a few hours after that shooting in Pennsylvania.
First thing I thought of was this is what the Secret Service trains for every day. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of after action, a lot of investigation here to see what the Secret Service did well, what the Secret Service didn't do well, and how we can move forward and ultimately tweak our protective methodologies to make sure nothing like this happens again.
Everyone's question is probably going to be, how did this happen? How was this able to happen?
Great question, and that's exactly what we're going to need to find out.
If you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
We want to be able to, again, develop a very quick cocoon around the president so that we know that he is safe and sound. They are communicating with him on the ground, and they're taking a slight pause. It wasn't a long pause, but it was a slight pause so that the asset that was able to fully negate the perpetrator here was able to communicate with the shift around the former president. Hey, the perpetrator is down. Now is a safe time to move. So again, done in a textbook fashion.
When a rally is held in an area like this, where it is outdoors, and it's not something that's contained to a specific area or like an event center, does that make it harder to secure?
Outdoor events are very, very difficult. However, the Secret Service knows what it's doing. It has the protective methodologies and assets and personnel to be able to provide what it believes is a very secure environment.
That's Angelina Salcido with the 11 Alive political team reporting. We also talked about the security of future events like the upcoming Republican National Convention, which is scheduled to start tomorrow. He said security will be stepped up, but not too much because of how much planning already goes into an event like that. He added that what may be a short-term change is if either former President Trump or President Biden hold any outdoor events leading up to the November election. This story is still developing, and 11 Alive has you covered. Head right now to our homepage for our extensive coverage on this story with many more details likely to come out today. Welcome back into the Georgia Vote. It is time now for our political roundtable. Today we have Democratic strategist Howard Franklin. He's worked on campaigns throughout the Southeast and now leads the consulting firm Ohio River South. And Republican strategist and pollster Mark Roundtree, also an expert on campaigns here in Georgia. He's the founder and president of Landmark Communications, based right here in Atlanta. Guys, we appreciate you both coming in this morning. Obviously, a lot happening in the world right now. Howard, you're a committed Democrat. Mark, you're a committed Republican. But I want to start here. We'll get to the politics in a minute. Just as an American, watching what happened yesterday at that rally, Howard, what went through your mind?
It was obviously surprising. You know, the temperature's been turned up on our politics for a very long time. And maybe it's a testament to the restraint that voters and rally goers and others have really been able to demonstrate for a long period of time, because this was the furthest thing from my mind. I know we've seen a lot of heated political rhetoric. We've seen a lot of tough talk from podiums and from stages, but nothing like this in quite a long time. So I was just honestly shocked when I started to see both the text messages and the reporting. It certainly shocked me out for a Saturday.
Mark, your first reactions?
Probably like everybody else, it would have been shock and astonished and a little bit angry at how this really could have happened. How does a 20-year-old lone gunman climb a building, get to the top, carry a gun? There are witnesses saying there's a guy on the top of the building and the Secret Service does not respond in time. How does that happen? I mean, I'm a little upset as an American about that.
And we've seen elected leaders raising those questions in the kind of 12 to 24-hour period that we're in following what happened. And I think we can all be sure more questions and more answers hopefully will come from that. It is the Georgia Vote. We do have to talk about politics here. It's our job, and everyone who's watching, all of our tasks, to try to make sense of how these developments fit into the political cycle here as well. Howard, President Biden's campaign has said that they are pausing all outbound communications. They're working to take down their television ads as quickly as they can. What is the conversation inside the Biden campaign right now?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, for all Americans today, Democrat and Republican, I think based on some of the statements you've already read, should cease to be the focal point of the discussion so far. Obviously, there's a lot to be done this week with the RNC's convention starting tomorrow, and I think there's a big question about exactly how yesterday's events may impact what we see from the stage for the next 4 days. So I think there's a lot of wait and see in the Biden world right now. I think there's also been a lot of calls for turning down the temperature on the rhetoric, on some of the discussion, some of the things that have been said. And I know there's a lot of, I've read and I've seen from some of the statements that folks are saying, hey, let's, this is partly because Democrats have called for really just underscored a particular risk in potentially re-electing a President Trump. I think this is rhetoric that's been going on for quite a long time. I looked it up because I had to make sure I had the dates right. But I think then candidate Trump talked about shooting a person on Fifth Avenue back in 2016 and not losing a single vote, right? So this has been going on 10 years at least now with the advent of the last couple election cycles.
And in fairness, and Mark, I think you may want to jump in here as well, but in the aftermath of what happened last night at the rally in Pennsylvania, many conservative politicians have circulated comments. I believe it was a tweet by former President Biden talking about putting a bullseye on former President Trump as this campaign moves forward. So when we talk about escalating political rhetoric, Mark, is this something that all sides share some blame for?
Yes. I mean, what Biden's exact words apparently were, time to put Trump in the bullseye, and that was said on July 8th. Those comments do cross a line, and I think that how you comport yourself in social media can affect people, and I think we all forget that at times.
How do we walk back from this place? I think there are a lot of Americans who, looking around this morning, and they were watching last night, and they have this sense of, oh my God, it keeps getting worse. It keeps getting worse. How do we walk back from this?
There is a sense of lawlessness in the country. There is a sense that laws are being unevenly enforced, depending on which political group is being attacked or defended. And that is important. I think the application of the law evenly would, I think, give people a lot more confidence that something like this would not be happening.
Howard, your thoughts on the road ahead?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this feels much more like a perceptual issue than one that's rooted in what's actually happening. I think there's a lot that any objective observer could say, hey, Democrats will take issue with this or Republicans will take issue with that. I think some broad-based agreement that this rhetoric isn't healthy for our politics, isn't getting us to, smart, informed, thoughtful decision-making, I think is what would have to happen. And it feels like in this moment that President Biden and President Trump might be willing to, share that pact or make a pact that might bring down the temperature on some of this rhetoric.
We got about 30 seconds. Mark, your thoughts on that. Is there a possibility where both the former president and the current president can get on the same page and at least set some ground rules moving forward?
I don't think these two would ever do that. Not related to anything along these lines. No, I don't. I think these two genuinely do not like each other. They don't wish each other this kind of ill. Neither one does, but I don't think that's going to happen.
What does that say about us as a country if we're at that point?
I think it says something has to change.
We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot more to discuss. The good news is we've got a whole nother block of the panel coming up. Stay with us. The Georgia Vote continues right after this. Welcome back into the Georgia Vote and our political roundtable experts, Mark Roundtree, Howard Franklin. We want to get into the political ramifications of what happened and what has happened over the last 24 hours, but it's worthwhile to take just 60 seconds and ground us in history here. This is not the first time the life of a president has been attempted to be taken. This is not the first assassination attempt. There have been also successful assassinations in the history of this country. Still, the last one was many decades ago. It was former President Ronald Reagan. Did you ever expect to see something like this happen again, Mark?
Absolutely.
Really?
Especially with the tenor of this particular campaign. I'm surprised that something like this has not happened over the last 10 years as it is.
Howard?
Yeah, I'd agree with Mark.
That's pretty chilling statements to see seasoned veteran political folks like yourselves have that sense of it.
We've seen the rhetoric and even in some senses the violence continue to escalate. You're surprised to see it when it actually does happen, right? I wasn't thinking about President Trump and a rally in Pennsylvania, but yeah, I think that I think all the warning signs have been there.
Still, the campaigns will eventually get back online. They'll start moving again in full force towards Election Day because that is what happens. Eventually, right now we're in sort of a pause period, but it's not going to last forever. Mark, what's the ramification as you see it? You're a pollster, you specialize in the numbers. Will this have an impact politically on the campaign?
No way to know yet. And it's a little bit, I have to acknowledge, ghoulish to think in terms of the political ramifications of a tragedy, an American tragedy. But I do think that it does accentuate for the public a feeling of lawlessness in the country, of uneven application of the law that may be encouraging some people to act. I do think that it absolutely re-energizes, if they even needed it, sort of the Republican and the Trump base. These people are now upset and know that they're being targeted by some people. So I think it does have an impact on the election.
And Howard, the Republican National Convention is set to start tomorrow.
Right.
What are Democrats thinking? What are Democrats strategizing about how to navigate this next week?
It's so funny you ask this question, Zach, because Democrats didn't know what to expect in the first place, right? We don't have a presidential or vice presidential nominee yet named for former President Trump. There's been a lot of questions about exactly what the agenda will ultimately include. I do think it is an interesting elevation of a topic that Democrats have long been active on, and that is of active in mass shootings. 4 people were shot yesterday. I think the FBI would classify that as a mass shooting. So interesting to see whether or not mass shootings make it onto the agenda for the RNC in the next several days. But I honestly, because of all the turmoil the last several months, weeks, days, it's hard to really have a sense of where exactly the RNC is going. I haven't been involved in several Democratic national conventions. I know how large and unwieldy these organizations are. I know it's going to be very difficult to change what's on the teleprompter, the signage, the videos, et cetera. So I don't know how much it will change to reflect the happenings of yesterday.
Well, and as you both know, in a campaign for the White House, there are the principals, the two main candidates, Republican and Democrat, and that's former President Trump and President Biden. But there is an enormous ecosystem of surrogates and lower-level elected officials who play an important role in those campaigns as well. Senators, congresspeople, state-level officials. Mark, how do campaigns make sure that whatever messaging they want to get out in these periods of turmoil and really high-tension moments is being messaged up and down the ladder, so to speak?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Well, then that's on me. So if you talk about messaging, that's an issue. In a world where you have surrogate politicians who are also sharing their own comments, weighing in on big moments like this, the campaign apparatus itself may say, hey, we want this to be the message.
Just today, the Trump campaign from the top down has directed its staff to tone down the response, tone down any venomous response, even if they're upset. There's a part of this you can control, which is the staff itself, but then there's a part that it's just social media.
Well, and then there are other elected officials who they can kind of do what they want, right, Howard?
Yeah, I'll tell you, from the Biden campaign's perspective, I get rapid response emails when a thing happens, right, whether it's the debate or some other, national issue or any issue of import that I might be called upon to speak to. And many times that's including some of the facts and figures you might not otherwise be aware of. Sometimes it is about what Mark mentioned. Hey, here's kind of how we want the touchstone to feel. This is the approach we want to take. But those sorts of things, I think, in 2024, absolutely they're flying around. You can go to the social media of the principals and see kind of what tone and what tact they're taking. But certainly for those of us who are involved at any level, we're going to get some
I hate to cut you off. We've got about 15 seconds left. I just want to give you one last opportunity each. One sentence. The most important thing to happen in this country politically right now is what?
Coming up, the second debate. I mean, outside of this particular event, the ABC debate that's coming in a few months.
And Howard, following up?
I would say there is still room for, if not the principals themselves, for many of the supporters to say, let's come together, let's figure out how to tone down the rhetoric in this election.
Howard Franklin, Mark Roundtree, we appreciate it. Stay with us. The Georgia Vote continues next. Welcome back to the Georgia Vote. A quick programming note. Because of our changes with today's show following the unprecedented tragedy that happened in Western Pennsylvania last night, we were unable to bring you our conversation with State Senator Jason Estevez or our regular Voice of the Voter segment. You can still find them online right now, though, on 11alive.com/The Georgia Vote. We appreciate you watching us this morning on this unprecedented, frightening day. We hope to see you back here again next week.